off, Denny Hamlin says Chase Elliott's move was a, quote, tantrum.
Ooh.
He shouldn't be racing next week. Right rear hooks are absolutely unacceptable. Spot on, spot off. Ooh, Freddie. Gotcha.
I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. Spot on for Denny's comments, obviously. And listen, like, we have a lot of fun on here about me professing my love for Denny and joking around about that. You can take Denny Hamlin completely out of this entire equation, in my opinion, would not change one bit. It could be somebody like Ross Chastain that maybe deserves 100 paybacks from 100 different people. This was completely unacceptable. Denny moves up the racetrack, squeezes Chase. Chase gets in the fence, comes down pretty clearly to me, intentionally hooks him in the left rear.
They also
in the
touched
rear,
on the backstretch.
Yeah, before that.
Yeah.
Coming off a 2. But, I mean, to me, it's pretty clear that he intentionally hangs a left turn into his right rear quarter panel. Denny posted the SMT data, which clearly shows
I need to play it again.
Yeah, keep going. Clearly shows that he hooked him in the right rear with a left turn. So to me, I think that if Chase is not suspended today or tomorrow, next week's probably going to be my last week with a hard card, because I tweeted last year that Bubba Wallace's penalty was unprecedented because nobody had ever been suspended before for intentionally hooking somebody in the fence. And let's get something clear, because I see all you idiots out there talking about, Bubba did this and he did something different. He went down there and tried to confront him. Steve O'Donnell clearly said in his quote, Bubba Wallace was suspended for what happened on the racetrack with Kyle Larson and the incident that occurred, putting other drivers at harm. You can go up and read the quote. But listen, so that eliminates anything else that happened after the wreck. But so the precedent set, you suspended one guy. If you want any integrity in your sport, you had better suspend Chase Elliott this week.
I think it's the exact same thing as what Bubba did to Larson, and I thought that was dirty. And I think what Chase did to Denny is dirty. It's the equivalent to sucker punching somebody in a bar. If you want to get in a fight, get in a fight. Man up.
I don't know if that's sucker punching, because Denny actually did put him in the wall, so there was kind of a pushing first. But
do you think Chase's day was over at that point?
No, it wasn't.
Do you
over.
think his car was really hurt?
No.
Do you think Elliott's response about having, like, once you tear the right sides off these things, it's over?
I saw Austin Cindric pound the fence in turn 2 and drive it to pit road, change the tires, and take back off. These things don't break like they used to in the first. We were all, the first 6 months of this car, there's some issues with stuff, but people have figured out they're durable. We don't just break steering now like we used to. So this isn't the first time this year where the steering is broke and the guy drives it. I showed you an instance where a guy said his steering broke after turning left on a straightaway and drives it all the way to the hauler after going 2 laps on the track and then his pit stall and then turns behind the wall in a sharp corner at a small track. So
to Freddie's point, these guys also have a history. I mean, we talked about Bubba and Amarola having a history. We don't know why. Denny and Chase have a history too. Denny wrecked Chase. Chase wrecked him back, took him out of the playoffs.
Denny got hit at Martinsville into Chase, according to Denny.
Well, I'm just telling you, there's a history here, and when you right rear somebody and turn them head on into the wall, I can't support that.
No, I don't. That's seeing the in-car camera and knowing that that's preventable. Like, I get it if you're 3-4 wide and everyone's last. You know how it gets off turn 4 when you're 3-4 wide. It's tight, but this is.
And let me tell you people something else. The 6 car had nothing to do with anything that happened right there.
Come on, man.
So when you see
my timeline here,
when you see that replay, especially the aerial view, and you think the 6 had anything to do with Chase Wreck and Denny, you're an idiot.
Yeah, listen, I said it on here last year after Vegas. Like, it's completely unacceptable to ever do that. That's not something you could ever do. No,
exactly. You cannot blame the 6.
My guy, right or wrong, you cannot. It's not acceptable. You can't do that. You cannot react that way. You can't overreact that way. Listen, thank God for the safety improvements we had since 2001, because that was the exact same wreck that killed Blaze Alexander. Alexander.
I watched that live.
Me too. That was the same spot, same thing. Come across the. I think it was the 2 car maybe, and back then, but. Like same exact spot, hooked. Not I don't know if it was intentional back then, but same hit.
It was
right
not
before
intentional.
the wall.
No, racing happens like that at that
and
track.
it's just like that was a head-on shot. Like, I've seen some of the pictures of the cockpit of Denny's car. The steering wheel looks like it's turned inside out. I mean, that was an unbelievable bad angle to hit at. And listen, it's just I don't know.
I think he let go
what's
of the
going to
wheel
come out of my
too, didn't
mouth.
he?
Denny eventually did.
It
yes.
amazes me that he gets hit in the right rear quarter panel. And I think he had his hands off the wheel before he hit.
Let me ask you guys a question. Should drivers that get suspended while we're talking about this be eligible for the playoffs?
Yes.
TJ?
Because, and I'll tell you why. I know TJ needs an hour.
I agree with you, but go ahead.
Because here's my thing. The sponsors and the team members, their livelihood shouldn't hang on one guy. Because in any other sport, we're going to have a quarterback that gets suspended. Well, another quarterback comes in and plays, and your team can still make the playoffs.
Yeah.
You can still win a championship. You can still win the next game, right? So that's why I am all for it.
Okay, but I'm just saying this is on just driver's side. Like, you can leave the owner's points in there, and the team is not affected by that. The team's in there. But my point is this doesn't really affect Chase if Chase is or not suspended. But say a guy like Byron goes out there and does something that, especially on track over aggression, does something that warrants a suspension. What does that cost him?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Maybe $75,000 to $100,000.
Yeah.
I don't think suspension like that's for that. It's them to sit out a week, sit in your car out there.
But if you're not losing anything, what's the point of it? Like in my mind, and this is obviously just me spitballing, whatever. Like I think if you are suspended, if you're William Byron and you do something egregious enough to get suspended on the racetrack, this is a big deal. Like you're doing something that's harming other drivers or putting other drivers at harm. This is a big deal. This isn't something to gloss over. You should lose whatever playoff eligibility you've already garnered. Like you should not have playoff points, or you should not. Your wins already should not count. You have to win again or point your way back in. You have to make this hurt to get these guys to stop doing this, because obviously it didn't stop when Bubba got suspended last year. So you have to make this hurt. And right now you don't get. And there's no penalty.
I mean, I'd agree with taking away your playoff wins.
Take away you're not locked in any longer. You have to win again or point your way in.
Yeah, but as a spotter on that team, I shouldn't be penalized for my driver doing something stupid.
Sponsor,
but you're not. You're,
as a sponsor who's missing out on coverage, who's missing out on potential activations,
it doesn't matter. This is the point. It has to hurt.
Well,
It's got to hurt. It's got to hurt somebody.
But when Bubba got suspended, did it make him change the way he drove? Is he driving less aggressive and taking things out?
He is
on
not
track?
driving less aggressive.
What if
As far as taking things out
I think
on
it's
track?
is he more mature when he gets frustrated? That's the question.
That's where I'm
maybe.
getting at.
But
So
listen,
to Freddie's point here, what if this takes Denny out for a month and Chase sits out a week? Is that really?
I mean, that's a good point.
like my point is a suspension to somebody that's already locked into playoffs means nothing. Because it's maybe 4 or 5 playoff points, and maybe 20 or 30, 40.
He's locked in. He knows.
He's locked in. He's good. He can
can
do whatever
basically
he wants. So you could go hook some. If you know you're locked into playoffs, you just go hook somebody because what's the worst going to happen? They're going to suspend me for a week. I'm good with that.
I mean, they got a sub already, ready to go.
But if you take it away, where listen, you're no longer locked in now. You've got to either win again or have enough points to get in, which most of these guys will. But make this hurt to make these guys think about this stuff. Again, think twice, because we saw if this is, the message was supposed to be sent last year when they suspended Bubba. Well, Chase didn't get that message apparently because he just did the exact same thing.
Rick Hendrick has 296 Cup wins. Obviously, the most successful winning owner in NASCAR history. Brilliant billionaire guy. It seems though, with a lot of these things, Hendrick gets a little bit of preferred treatment. Do you agree with that?
It definitely seems that way. I don't know if that's the case or not, but the perception is out there, and the perception is out there throughout the garage. Not just us 3 idiots sitting
but
here.
what are you getting at now?
I think it carries further than the garage too. I think it's like
fans, everybody kind of
Big Al's.
What are you getting at now then? Like they haven't announced a suspension yet. They could.
I mean, listen, we were just a year ago talking about him driving on the racetrack. Chase Elliott, the 9 car, the most popular driver in NASCAR currently that's sitting in a race car. I still think Dale Jr. is more popular. But we were just talking about here. He was driving on the racetrack with his deck lid or whatever it was hanging off the back, and he didn't get red flagged. Wow. So, I mean, we see what we think teams get away with Like, it just seems they get away with more.
You know, we have race-altering rules in place. Chase Elliott says on the radio a couple years ago, where's that 4 car? I'm going to go back out there and help my teammate or whatever. You know, goes out there and cost Kevin Harvick the win at Bristol and helps Larson get it. Like, there's been instances where obviously you saw this here earlier with the appeals panel. Like there's instances.
But Denny gets fined and points and money for changing the outcome of a race.
Yeah.
And yet
they
we let
still
that go
finished
on.
the race. They both came around and finished.
Question: if this was a situation where it wasn't Denny and it wasn't somebody who is very popular, has his own podcast, has a very large voice in the sport, rightfully so,
Owner, driver.
do you think that this would get as much coverage, as much
Yes.
eyes on it?
I said
should.
when I started this conversation, I started and saying you can take Denny Hamlin out of this equation and replace him with any person in the sport. It could be J.J. Yaley. It could be Josh Bilicki, who didn't get me a win in DBC picks this week. Like, it could be anybody in the sport. When you right hook somebody into the fence like that, it is completely unacceptable.